At this point, I don't even know if the man is still capable of playing Terran versus Terran. It has been such a long time since none other than Clem actually played the matchup. He's playing with the blue Protoss pieces this time around. His opponent, though, not, well, moving from the Terran units just yet. With the red SCVs, we're looking inside of the main base of ByuN. We see this time and time again, and genuinely, I think in 2025, at least according to like Aligulek, which is a statistics website in StarCraft 2, it keeps track of all of the games played, Clem has played one series of Terran versus Terran. Every other time he had to go up against another Terran player, he decided to pick Protoss instead. And at this point, I mean, I've seen Clem play a whole lot of Protoss against Terran. I think it's probably like top 2, maybe top 3 best in the world? I mean, at least with very specific strategies. I think, broadly speaking, if you look at like his Stalker micro, for example, it is absolutely phenomenal. And there's not really a whole lot of players that can do better. Maybe Hero, maybe Max Specs, but that's really about it. I'm sure there are some strategies that can catch him off guard, and that's exactly why I like this move right here from ByuN. ByuN decides to build his very first barracks outside of the main base. Now, this is something that we used to see back in the early days of StarCraft 2. If you've been watching for a long time, this is called a Maka Rex. Nobody calls it that anymore, because the player Maka retired in probably like 2012 or so. Either way, it's one of those build orders that can be quite annoying for Protoss players to deal with, and Clem doesn't see either of the two barracks right now. So now, oh, is he gonna check? Okay, he is going to see one of the two at the very least. That's something. At this point in time, there's still a good shot, though, that Clem will make the assumption that there is indeed some sort of shenanigans going on. He decides to go for a Zealot first. It does mean that your Nexus timing is going to get out of whack, and everything just becomes a little bit, well, more frustrating to deal with if you are the Protoss player in this situation, right? So, can you, in this spot, for example, still just plant down your Twilight Council immediately? Can you go ahead and immediately transition away to, I don't know, your Blink research? Or do you have to play the build a little bit differently in this sort of situation? Well, this is one of those spots that I can imagine Clem hasn't been in all too frequently. And maybe that'll be exactly the little edge that ByuN needs to be able to navigate this into an easy 1-0 victory. For now, though, it's not really that committed for ByuN. He's even building a bunker right now at home. Just using the extra barracks here to produce a bunch of Reapers, but obviously, Reapers themselves don't deal a ton of damage. He's hoping that maybe Clem is going to overreact, and you know what? I think there may be a slight overreaction. Shield battery already. Obviously, he doesn't know exactly what's going on. No shield battery on the low ground, though, which is kind of interesting. But notice the lack of a Twilight Council here for Clem. So he's not going to be able to get the Blink upgrade going at nearly as early a time as he normally would. Well, it is going to be a Twilight Council eventually. And I'm assuming it is still going to be Blink first, although we have seen a lot of Protoss players lately experiment with Charge first. We've even been seeing a little bit of Adept, like Glaives first, in this particular matchup, although I highly doubt that that is something we're going to be seeing right here from the young Frenchman. I think it's going to be Blink. I mean, Clem is... This is the only criticism I really have of his Protoss versus Terran, and there it is. He is very predictable. Now, is it bad to be predictable if you win the vast majority of the time? Like, if you win the 90% of the games that you play, does it matter that you go Blink every single time? I'm not so sure that it's really that big of a deal, but I feel like the next step in Clem's Protoss, well, journey would be for him to, like, mix it up a little bit more. I would love to, for example, see him maybe mix it up with some Stargate openers and start off with some Phoenix control, or maybe even an Oracle build, something like that. Although both of those units obviously behave very differently than any of the other Terran units do. This is, in my mind, like Blink Stalker builds, especially with the Prism, it is very reminiscent of the way that you control Marine Marauder Medevac as well. Anyway, ByuN doesn't really know what he's playing against, and he doesn't really care. He just opened up with a bunch of Reapers, but that was, well, pretty much it. Already, Stimpack is coming up. It's about a third of the way done, maybe a little bit less. Siege Tank already available. Second one is going to spawn. And normally, this would be around the time that the Blink Stalkers hit on the other side of the map. And in this particular instance, we don't have Blink finished yet. So Clem needs to mix it up a little bit. How many gateways do we have? We have 2 right now. A third one just about to finish as well, although I say just about to finish. It's actually quite late. He decides to go for a faster Templar archives. Actually, quite an intelligent start here from ByuN. Even though he hasn't really done anything, you can see all of these small changes on the side of the Protoss here, and yeah, it makes the whole matchup a little bit different. He is going to try and, I think at the very least, blink into the main base. Yeah, I think maybe aiming for some worker kills is the best thing you can do. I mean, you should never be able to get Stimpack, although getting Stimpack here would be massive. Couple SCVs, okay. This is what MaxPax does in the majority of his matches. Do we go charge on the back of this at all, Clem? Normally you would expect charge. Yeah, I was going to say, I think we were supposed to start that a little bit sooner. Probably meant to start it a little bit quicker too. Keep in mind, Stimpack is now available. Very easy for these units. Yeah, to snipe the Prism here. Both of them are playing Stalker Chicken with one another, I suppose. If you unload, at least over here, there's a very likely chance that those Marines are going to be using their Stimpaks and running up towards the high ground. So it is going to be Psystorm here on the back of this. And Clem is just sort of creating like a soft contain, but he doesn't really have that fast of a third Nexus here at all. So I think all of this is serving ByuN just fine. I mean, in a passive game like this, where neither player is really committed to much, it usually benefits Terran, right? Especially with ByuN already having a third command center done before the Protoss has their third base. I mean, it's a really nice lead here for the Terran, although it all comes down to unit micro now. You do go into the mid game with a slight advantage here as Terran, but can you actually leverage your way into a win? Because Protoss is going to have their splash damage available, and margin for error, especially against those high Templar, is very, very small. Already, Ghost Academy building here for ByuN. Yeah, so in a weird way, that proxy barracks, I mean, it was a proxy on his side of the map, but in a weird way, it allows ByuN to now leverage his way into a longer game. A lot of Terran players at this point in time, they go for a lot of SCV all-ins against Protoss specifically. A lot of Protoss players enjoy playing this phase in the game quite a bit. I don't really know exactly how Clem's feelings about this phase in the matchup are, but I mean, judging by the fact that he is off-racing so consistently with Protoss, I think he probably also thinks it's a little bit better for Protoss than it is for Terran. At least that is the common complaint that we hear in modern StarCraft 2, that Terrans feel like they are, well, just not able to go toe-to-toe with the Protoss at this stage in the game. So ByuN kind of like opening himself up to this particular strategy is both really cool, but also a little bit worrisome, because most Protoss players prefer this phase in the matchup and dislike the earlier parts of it. ByuN, though, is very much so the one leading this charge. Now, is there enough for a literal charge attack? Because this is, oh, that's a beautiful storm, a second one as well. This is a banger attack right here from Clem. Yo, Clem didn't blink once. I mean, maybe literally he did with the Stalkers, but he did not hesitate at all when it comes to trying to counter this strat. 13 SCVs just died. This man is expending, by the way. He's making a Robo Bait. He's building up a fourth Nexus. This is just Clem putting on a little bit of pressure. ByuN might just be getting owned. I mean, there are some ghosts already out. But I mean, the Prism will save a lot of the high Templar, and he's just storming his opponent to death. Dirty. Very dirty. He decides to warp in. There's not enough anti-air to kill the Prism. Yo, Clem just dumpstered ByuN. This was very much so ByuN's pacing in the game. Like, ByuN was very much so the one deciding that this is what we're going to go and do. Clem just murdered the man. That was scary. Like, that seemed like one of those positions, to me at the very least, that Protoss players don't deal with a whole lot. And I was wondering if maybe Clem was being a little late on the third Nexus in particular, and maybe a bit too passive, and then also a bit delayed actually on the Twilight Council, even earlier than that, but Clem just showed us that he knew perfectly well how to deal with that exact opener from ByuN. Obviously, he couldn't figure out the exact build that ByuN was going for, right? You're always dealing with limited amounts of information, but, well, I don't think we're going to see ByuN do that a second time in a row. Because that really led nowhere. I'm assuming this is just gonna be a good old expansion on the low ground, and likewise for Clem, we'll probably see him doing the same thing. Again, it is perfectly viable to go for a Stargate follow-up instead. We see it all the time. But, I mean, there's a reason, right? Why Blink is so powerful. It just allows you a lot of mobility early on, and then also, well, great offense, great defense. Whereas you find yourself a lot more limited if you decide to go into, for example, Phoenixes. It's good at defending, but difficult to actually leverage your way to a big advantage from there. And margin for error, as per usual with Protoss. And as per usual, I guess, in StarCraft 2, right, is always tricky. Now, I did look this up, by the way, in the rules for the EWC this year. And as far as I can tell, it does allow players to race switch in the middle of a series, in the middle of a tournament. So, critical there for Clem. Because imagine, like, the Esports World Cup comes up, right? And Clem is suddenly forced to play a TVT. I think at this point it's very likely that if we do see these two or any other Terran player go up against Clem in the World Championships this year, it's very likely that Clem is going to be bringing out Protoss. Like, initially at the beginning of the year, everyone was like, he's just kind of joking, he's just having some fun, yada, yada, yada. But now a half year later, I think Clem is serious about it. He's no longer messing around. The new patch has been treating Protoss very nicely. And even though Clem is extremely good at, well, Terran versus Protoss, it looks like his Protoss versus Terran is also very strong. And if anything, honestly, if you get really good at, like, your opponent's race, right? It makes, you, like, your matchup from your point of view also a little bit better. Like, Clem having a deep understanding on the Protoss' point of view in the TVP matchup will really benefit his Terran point of view as well. Alright, so we did have a Zealot here blindly, which is a little funky. Generally, we don't go for a blind Zealot. So the next step for Clem is clearly to start playing Zerg as well, right? The 2026 meta. It would be nice to see. Initially, I was kind of wondering too, though, if his opponents were actually taking him seriously, right? Say, for example, you are Maru going up against Clem's Protoss. Do you take it seriously? There's a very real chance that Maru is just going to do something stupid and then kind of get owned. I mean, at this point, the word is well out and everybody's aware that Clem's Protoss is not to be trifled with, but it is certainly something that initially I think players didn't take too seriously. Either way, ByuN's going to start this particular game off with a good old Cyclone. There are already units waiting on the high ground, though. And that does mean that Clem is going to be able to get first hits in. Oh, Zealot actually hits very hard in this circumstance. Do have to maybe micro this back, but I think... Okay, nice control right there by ByuN, who does kill the Stalker and keeps the Cyclone alive for now. There's a embrace of all of the SCVs, and he gets the mass repair done. So, not a bad beginning here for the Terran player whatsoever. That's where those Cyclones are very good. Usually you make them actually to snipe, for example, Adepts. Adepts seem to be like their main target. Normally they would also be good against Oracles, but again, not really something that Clem goes for. And no difference this time around either, as we once more have a good old Twilight Council to start things off. Now, how many gateways do we go for? We've seen quite a few Protoss players experiment lately with a double gate into third Nexus. We even had that one game where Classic decided to go one gateway in total into 3 Nexus, which is exceptionally greedy. Although, to be fair, that game was, well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but that game was really nice for Protoss. A 1-gate triple Nexus expand is nutty. Clem, though, going for the most conventional of the options. This is a triple gate and what will likely be led into a third Nexus here momentarily. So by no means the fastest start. By no means, though, the most aggressive version of the Protoss builds either. You can do this exact build right here that Protoss is going for with 4 gateways instead. It allows you, well, game-winning potential, I suppose, if the opponent decides to be a little bit too greedy, which ByuN, by the way, isn't doing here, but used to be more popular. These days, we don't really see it much anymore. So this is just a quintessential normal macro opener here for Clem, who will probably be happy to bring a similar game out as he did in the first game of this series. All right, so it's going to be charge here for Clem. After Blink. Templar Archives again too. So again, a delayed third. He's prioritizing all of the tech. Ooh, wants the siege tank. Does lose 1 Stalker, 2 Stalkers? No, I think just 1. Yeah, the other one died against that Cyclone earlier. 1 siege tank for 1 Stalker and a bunch of hull damage too. There is in the meantime that Raven that snuck out on the left side of the map here, so ByuN's is going to try and see if maybe he can get some counterattack damage done. I don't think that Clem is really going to be able to achieve much though. There's already 2 siege tanks. You can try and maybe snipe a bunch of the workers through the back, but that is likely going to be it. Good old Storm again, good old Charge again. ByuN might be able to get some counterattack damage in, although he now sees the shield battery, meaning that he has to go all the way around. Wants to go for the natural feedback. Ooh! Rarely do we see a High Templar at this stage in the game. But hey, a feedback is the perfect way to shut this down. What about the micro over here, though? Okay, he actually snipes the Cyclone to keep the Prism alive. That could have been an absolute disaster. Ultimately, it's 1 additional Stalker going down, 1 Cyclone, 2 SCVs. I mean, stellar beginning here again for Clem. I really can't fault him too much. This is all looking really powerful. I mean, he hasn't really taken any real damage. He's got himself a 3rd Nexus. My main concern is when Terran first goes across the map. And we may just be onto that here in just a moment, although ByuN decides to go for a 3rd command center too. Not opting to go for any sort of those SCV all-ins, and that's what we've been seeing a lot as of late, so maybe that is why we see Clem here prioritizing the Side Storm so quickly in favor of a delayed 3rd Nexus. Because a lot of Protoss players have been dying lately to those SCV pools. Either way, ByuN is not going for that. He has seen, obviously, he's felt the High Templar build. So he decides not to pull the boys, build up a 3rd command center instead. And we're going to test the waters with some of those medevac drops. Now, I feel like it's always worth emphasizing that, like, Clem's Terran versus Terran has always been really good. Like, it's not that he's playing this matchup because he believes his TVT is weak. I don't think that's the case. He's won tournaments off of the back of his TVT. Like, his TVT is strong. He just seems to prefer playing this less volatile matchup, I suppose. And maybe his playstyle in TVT. Maybe his, like, general playstyle. Storm? Ooh, not bad. Okay, Prism could have saved it even. But, I mean, shuts this down easy peasy. There was, in the meantime, also a fight happening in the middle of the map, it seems, with a couple Stalkers going down. Alright. Some very quick ghosts here from ByuN too. So, ByuN is doing the same thing again as in the previous game. Just very much so emphasizing the ghost production, which a lot of Terran players, by the way, have been neglecting a little bit in this matchup. Usually, the earliest that we see the ghost coming out in like a normal game these days is when Terran is like well secured on 3 bases. So ByuN started up the Ghost Academy here, well, quite a long time before the 3rd even is on the low ground, and it does mean that he's gonna have a pretty easy answer against the High Templar, at least in theory. I mean, we saw a similar setup in the previous game. In theory, the High Templar are countered. And against charge slots, well, EMP is also fantastic. It all comes down, though, to unit control. Not a bad Storm. Gotta be careful you don't accidentally walk all of your Zealots through the Storms. Those Widow Mines putting in so much value. Okay. That was an excellent engagement there for ByuN. Clem getting a little bit ahead of himself. In the meantime, there was also a drop over here. We have the auto turret drop down as well by the Raven. Okay. ByuN finds himself in a much more comfortable position now. 20 supply up. Still a decent eco. He did lose a couple of workers, I think, in total, but nothing all too crazy. Especially since he also dealt damage in the meantime on the other side of the map, and he still is doing so, right? Even though this Raven got countered the first time around, it is still softening up a bunch of those units. I do believe it's time for Clem to back up, though. No way that he can really sit out in the middle of the map and wait until the Protoss player gets, or until the Terran player, rather, gets siege tanks within range. Not really an option that you want to deal with. So that means that we do now arrive in a bit of a macro game. How many workers are we going to produce here as Protoss? We've seen a lot of Protoss players go up to like 80 plus, and they sort of like treat Protoss like they would Zerg, where they basically just warp in a ton of reinforcements. We've seen Protoss players go all the way up to like 20 gateways and just warp in a stupid amount of units. And it kind of feels like maybe we're headed in that direction here too, although Clem is not adding on that many probes. So he needs to keep that one in mind. Now he restarts the worker production again. Yeah, with the 4th Nexus finishing up, he didn't want to oversaturate his bases first, so we'll see him powering out some of those workers here over the next minute or two. In the meantime, ByuN is just sitting back and really allowing himself to play this passive game. So it seems to me that ByuN believes that in the long drawn-out macro game, he is the favorite. At least that's the way he's approaching this entire series so far. That previous game, though, I mean, he kind of got what he asked for, and then he got absolutely demolished. Now he's kind of doing the same thing again, too. So those ghosts are really good offensively, but they might be even better defensively. It's difficult for Protoss to push into it, especially with siege tanks set up and all that, but it is difficult to, like, get a real proper attack going with this type of army here as the Terran, because you just have to sort of get rid of the High Templar first, and now there's Colossi in the mix. This is a difficult Protoss army to deal with. And if anything, this shows us that Clem is so far, at the very least, perfectly capable of playing a macro game too. Dark Shrine coming up here for Clem. Double upgrades. Got ourselves the Robo Bay, finishing up the extended thermal lens. That one feels a bit late to me. Third Colossus is just about to pop out, but it doesn't matter as long as the upgrade is done in time. And what was previously about a 20 supply lead for ByuN is dwindling because both players are approaching maxed out. Decent EMP here. Okay. Clem immediately decides to try and hunt this down. He needs his splash damage though, right? Oh. He needs his splash damage. Without the Colossi, without the High Templar, he's not going to be able to do much. Shadow Strike researching immediately here for Clem. That is the blink upgrade for the Dark Templar. As now he's also making his unit composition a lot more complex by adding in disruptors. Storms right there, at least attempted, got some decent damage in. High Templar keep on overextending a tad though. Although ByuN does take a beating, he's got enough healing in his units here to keep most of it alive. One Viking fell there, but that's not too bad. We really do need a few more Vikings, man. 4 Vikings is not quite enough. Okay, Barracks 6, 7, and 8. 2 more command centers inside of the main base. 4th base over here coming up as well, as we do have a medevac drop now down south. That must have been those, or up north rather, that must have been those medevacs that were hiding off to the left side of the main base. +3 coming up. +1 air weapons coming up here too for Clem, or for ByuN here, just trying to keep everything going. But he needs more Vikings. Without Vikings, he's going to have a difficult time. Some really good storms again, some decent EMPs as well. But this Protoss army still needs to be respected, okay? Nova does get denied as the Disruptor died just a split second before detonating. Looks like ByuN does stay alive. Just barely. Difficult defense, but ultimately a bit of a wash. Fusion Core coming up right now, too. I wouldn't be surprised to see a second starport in a second. We already have it. Okay. Double starport production. That means he can go into the mass Liberator production here, too. And Liberators do counter everything that Protoss has on the ground, and that's exactly what Clem is trying to avoid right now. Moves in, tries to make sure that he constantly whittles away at this Terran army, but I believe this to be an overextension. ByuN is now going to also be able to get some good pot shots in on those Colossi, and... okay. Another one of them falls. Those additional orbitals in the main base are going to be sweet. Not only can ByuN drop a bunch of mules, he can obviously use this as well to, well, remove the fog of war. He's not quite capable of scanning all of the time, but he can sort of keep tabs out, see if the Protoss army is a little closer than he would like it to be. It does mean, though, that Clem is now getting a lot of, well, freedom as well to expand all over the map. So he's going to go for the base over here. He's already built the one all the way on the other side. There's a Zealot in the far bottom left, too. Maybe the Probe is thinking about building up a Nexus here in just a moment. Obviously, if Clem is going to be able to mine 50% of the map, right, and then some, I mean, that would be very difficult for ByuN to come back from, but we're a long ways away from that. Liberator production has begun. I gotta say, though, I'm very impressed with the way that, like, Clem is just confidently playing the macro game now. He had a bit of urgency in his PvT in the past, where it kind of felt to me like he wanted the games to be over by, like, this phase in the game. But I guess he's been trying his best to just work on the macro match and, well, learn how to play the proper macro game against this sort of Terran army as well. And so far, I mean, it's looking powerful. The Colossi are taking a lot of damage. The Stalkers are targeting down the Vikings. Liberator production now is here, though, right? And as soon as we get up to, like, 12 Liberators or so, it's going to be much more difficult for Protoss to push in. The best way you can do so with Protoss would be with, like, for example, Tempests. but not so easily done, as we do have 10 invisible men on a mission. I mean, there are 2 detectors nearby. We have a little bit of a dance over here too. There are 2 detectors nearby, but I mean, obviously, yeah, do they care? I mean, the damage there, the DPS of those DTs is ridiculous. In the meantime, Clem decides to plant down a Nexus right within his opponent's face. Liberator range coming up. The Dark Templar actually continue onwards for a little bit longer. 20 SCVs, by the way, die. Dude, once more, you blink twice. In this instance, quite literally, with the Dark Templar just jumping on those bases. 36 workers die. And this is so tricky for Terran because you have to deal with this like constant tug of war on the right side of the map too, when you're dealing with those Purification Novas and all of the splash damage coming out of those High Templar. It is not easily dealt with at all. 43 workers, 44 workers have just died. And this is putting a lot more urgency here in ByuN's gameplay. Like, ByuN can't really keep sitting back here and taking a beating like that. Especially now with Clem sitting at 79 probes. We're kind of arriving at that phase in the game. Look at that. Income advantage taking a massive jump forward in favor of Terran. Or... I keep seeing Clem's username and I keep thinking he's Terran, but no! Too many games of Clem casted over the years. A lot of income advantage here in favor of the Protoss. Nice EMP right there though from ByuN, but I mean, at this point, like, we gotta start paying attention on whether or not the floodgates can be opened. Because it's just so freaking much Protoss production now. ByuN is still at a solid amount of supply, and overall, I do like his army composition better. Ooh, if you could get all these Zealots, that would be big. Yeah, getting these Zealots is really nice, although these Zealots are fully upgraded. So they deal a lot of damage, but that is a lot of resources down the drain. In the meantime, though, ooh, while ByuN is busy microing the left side, Clem decides to push forward over here on the right side, too. And it looks to me like this army is gonna get wiped off the map, and a lot of those SCVs will likely die. In the meantime, though, there is a counterattack now with those units that previously killed those Zealots. New Zealots, though, are spawning, and yeah, with this many gateways, I mean, we're at 12 gateways right now. It is just so difficult to stop the flood. I mean, there's a reason why Zealots and Zerglings both begin with the letter Z, right? Coincidence? This is my StarCraft conspiracy theory. No, but you can warp them in much the same way. You can just send in wave after wave after wave of Zealot. And it's difficult for Terran to deal with it. I mean, at this point, how much does ByuN have? Like, he's got command centers, sure. But, like, that's all he's got. He doesn't have a whole lot of units here to actually produce. Now what was previously meant to be used as scans is going to be used on mules instead. Clem's army, though, is looking absolutely massive. I mean, army size-wise, in, like, supply numbers, it's still all Disruptor Novas! You can't be eating those to the face. Ay, 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 ay. What a game right there from Clem. So normally we see Clem playing a very active, very aggressive style of Protoss, right? Like, he is the one that will send in the Stalkers early on and he will dance with all of the Terran units. In this particular series, it was ByuN saying, yo, you don't get to do that. I'm just gonna, like, force you to play macro instead, and we'll see how you deal with it. Turns out Clem deals with that just fine. GG.